Hey everyone, welcome back to the Steve of All Trades channel. Today I'm actually going to go through the process of building a bed frame. So for the actual main pieces themselves, the horizontal pieces, I tried to use a jigsaw to cut these little lap joints to make sure I had basically a 1/3 to 2/3 ratio, but it wasn't working out too well. I was getting a lot of movement in the bottom of the jigsaw, so I actually went and started using a handsaw, and here I actually hogged out some of the corners with a drill just to make sure that I was actually getting some nice accurate cuts. But I basically just cleaned them up with my handsaw and chisel. Then I took the corner pieces and got together a jig on my table saw, and what I did was actually just cut an inch out of each side so that there was an inch overhang or a half an inch overhang on each corner when they went together, just to kind of make it look a little nicer aesthetically. Then I tried to hog out the majority of the material with the router, but this is just a trim router, and the amount of material I was trying to take out, it was 3/4 of an inch thick, and it was just a little bit too much for the router to handle, and it was starting to jerk and skip a lot. So I actually just went back and used my chisel to actually just chip out the majority of what was left over. And since this was a ton of work, I actually used my circular saw to trim down the majority of the pieces. Then I can whack them out with my mallet and then really just use a chisel to kind of flatten everything out, just so I wasn't putting too much stress on the actual chisel itself. And here I'm just whacking the big chunks out, and then I followed the same process, but since I had 3 corners to do, I decided to just clamp them all together and follow that same process for each. Here you just see me doing one corner, but I actually did 2 sides of this where I cut in a inch deep piece so that there was a half inch overhang on each corner. And it actually turned out to look quite nice.
If you can see, I put these joints together, but everything's still a bit wobbly. So what I want to do is make this a little bit more solid, and by doing that, or to do that, I'm going to put some lag bolts in here. But to hold it still while I'm doing so, I'm just going to put some 2-inch screws where the lag bolts, I want the lag bolts to go, and that will help me make sure that everything is going to stay snug.
So once I got these pieces screwed in, that actually gave me the measurements that I was going to be using for the inner webbing and the inner framework that I'd be using here. So here I'm just roughly chopping the pieces on the chop saw.
Alright, so this next step is going to be a little bit nuanced. So, as you can tell here, this is where the screw was. I'm clamping this down as tight as possible so that I can get it tight. You can tell it's very sloppy right here, and it's just because it's not clamped together. The screws are just holding it loosely, but they're holding it enough so that it's not racking back and forth. Now, I'm going to take a 3/4 inch Forstner bit, drill this out so that I have enough space, and I want to do this before I drill out the 5/8 hole, because if I drill the 5/8 hole first, then this will be jumping all over the place. After I drill this one, I'm going to want to flip over and drill on the other side as well. But in between that, I'm going to drill this hole just so I have enough space, or I have basically a target to go through. Since that's going to be on the inside, if it jumps around a little bit, then I'm not super worried about it. But just for this, I want the outside to be presentable. I'm not going to go super deep. I just want enough where the carriage bolt is not going to be hanging out. Undo that. Then I'm basically going to drive this drill bit as far as it'll go. Okay, so that did not go through the other side. So basically what I'm going to have to do is undo this. I'll probably do the other 2 first before I undo this, and then I'll go through with the bit again and finish it off. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but you know what? If I want it done right and I want these carriage bolts in, holding it in, then that's what it takes.
Now, I was worried with this process once I undid the screws and clamps that when I finally put the bolts in that there would just be a little bit too much slop in the actual corners themselves. So I just made sure I tried to keep those clamped down as much as I could. And I actually found out that this part of the process was just not, it was not very nuanced. Just, pulling the corners out like that and trying to put the bolts in, just everything just kept coming apart. So in reality, if I just had a longer drill bit, that would have been the good path to follow. But we live and we learn. Woodworkers, we make mistakes. So here I'm just able to put the bolts and washers in, and I'm just snugging them up a little bit so that the corners are staying a bit tighter. But even with a little bit of slop in there, the bolts went in just fine.
What is up, everyone? Day 2, I'm back with the bed frame. So I found a few mistakes that I made, and in all honesty, this is the beauty, but also sort of the frustrations with woodworking. So basically, one of my worries with the bed frame was I've made them previously and they had a lot of racking to them, and especially something that's this tall, from here to here, that's almost 20 inches. So I got these carriage bolts so that I can cinch this down nice and tight. And when I started basically putting everything together, I had these corner braces on everything. And I was running this corner brace up to this outside piece. But what I realized is there's a lot sticking out back here, and I had to put the screws on the very outside here so that it can go into this. But what I didn't realize at the time, at least, is that there's probably an extra inch at the bottom here, and I'm going to have these rails going on the outside. So I'm actually going to take the corner brace off here and put it under here so that I have a little extra space. And this isn't sticking out down so far, because basically the whole reason that I made this so big is so I can put big Home Depot storage boxes under it, and they're about 18 inches tall. And under this, I should be able to fit about 6 or 8 of them. So the whole purpose of this was to make more room in my apartment, so that basically it's not covered in crap.
And here's basically the most unsexy part of this entire process. Here I clamped together what are going to be the 4 vertical pieces, and I'm using the circular saw to just kind of hog out the majority of where the crossbars are going to go. The reason I clamped all these together so that they're very even and there's not going to be any slop with this. Then basically I just take a small crowbar and a chisel to make them really nice and flat, so that when the cross braces go in, or the cross pieces go in them, they are seated very deeply and properly.
Whew. Well, if you ever want to do woodworking and you don't think that you're ever going to use that math class that you learned back in like 5th grade, you're wrong. So, holy shit, is this getting hard. So basically, I have this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece. Now, each gap of these, this is 60 inches across. It's a standard queen size bed, and 80 inches long. So that's, if you're ever making a queen size bed, this is standard dimensions. But I have to cut these in thirds. And so obviously 60 in thirds is 20 inches a piece. But you also have to include the 2.5 inches here, and inch and a half here and inch and a half there. So it's really splitting up 57 inches. So in reality, this is 18.5 here, 20 here, another 18.5 there. And the reason I'm doing that is so that really the gaps are mostly even. And if you think about it, people are going to sleep on this half, people are going to sleep on that half, but really in the middle, they're not going to bear that much weight. They typically, people will sleep more to the outsides. So I basically have to measure out 18, put the slats in. Obviously, these aren't set in, so they're sticking quite proud. But I'm going to put the slats in each, make sure they all line up, and then basically unscrew these, take them out, cut the grooves, and then we're going to rock and roll.
Basically here I'm following the same process where I'm hogging out the majority of that material with the circular saw, breaking it out with a crowbar and chisel. And this is kind of where you can get lost in the numbers, and you can kind of lose focus while you're doing somewhat advanced woodworking is here I'm focusing on where the actual horizontal pieces are going and how they're fitting with the vertical pieces, and how tightly everything's going together, and just chiseling out that little piece. And I actually make a mistake up here, and I cut on the wrong side.
Oh, I fucked up. So, messed up. Basically what I did was, these had a little tongue to go in this slot right there, and I cut them on the wrong side. I did the exact process that I did for these, and I thought I did everything correctly, and I didn't. I cut them on the wrong side. So now what I'm probably going to do is take these two extra pieces and just screw them in here, cut these slots so that they have something to rest in, and just cut my losses there, because frankly it was a stupid mistake. Happens. That's why this is really practice, you know. In reality, I don't get paid for this, so it's just a matter of going through and kind of fixing these minor mistakes. But it's just frustrating. I thought I was getting close to the end, but oh well. A little setback, but we'll fix it and move on. Alright, so problem solved. So as you can tell, I just added a scrap piece of 2x4 here. I still have that empty gap, but this is all going to get covered by plywood, so you won't be able to notice it anyway. But this extra 2x4 will hold this on. Now basically all I have to do is add that corner brace back right there, and I'm done. Oh, and I have to put plywood on top, but I'm debating between just leaving these joints as is or throwing a screw in them so that they don't shift. I think I'm definitely going to do it on the ends, but I don't know about in the middle. I mean, once they're in the ends, they're not going to shift all that much, so this is exhausting, but I'm almost done.
I just want to give a quick thank you to everyone that stayed this far into the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hit the like button if you like it. That kind of gives me an idea of what you want to see out of my channel. This was definitely a learning curve for me, and I really learned a lot out of this project. This came from, you know, just a design I drew on a piece of paper all the way to a finished product. So I just want to also give a quick shout out to my brother-in-law Chris for letting me use his shop. Here I am just cleaning everything up and leaving it hopefully a little bit better than how I found it. My GoPro died before I was able to record the assembly of the actual bed, so here are just a few pictures of the corner braces, the lattice work on the bottom, and the actual finished product. It turned out a little bit taller than I had hoped, but you know what? It did its job where I have plenty of storage under it, and it's only a mattress on top of plywood, so I don't actually have any box frame under this, so it turned out quite nice even though it is a little bit tall. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.